Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited. And the last chats were extremely interesting. So it means a lot that I can also participate and share a bit of my experience and thoughts. So I thought I'd start a bit with telling you about my upbringing. I was born in Ireland, in Dublin, to Polish immigrant parents that escaped actually during communism. And then we moved back to Poland in the late 90s. I went to an American school in Warsaw run by the US Embassy. I actually didn't speak Polish at the time yet. And I went to that school from first to 12th grade. And honestly, it was an amazing school. It was kind of like, I think, what America was always envisioned to be, this utopia of equality. There was no one really saw race, gender, ethnicity. We learned about everyone's cultures, but there was none of these biases. And it was absolutely amazing. And then I went to college. I went to college in the UK. I went to Cambridge, and that bubble popped. And during the first week of university, I was called out by a professor. Hey, Blondie, what do you think, in a full auditorium? Another professor that I asked to help with my undergrad thesis, I emailed him to meet after his lecture. And when he saw me, he said, "You're Victoria? You're the person that scores top statistics class here?" And I saw also among students that they sat according to their nationality, cultural background, gender. And that was completely different than the American school. I then went on to apply for banking jobs and would hear that I can't be part of a team because I'd be a distraction to an all-male team. I began investing after selling my first startup. And when walking into a boardroom, three males who were actually pitching me for quite a few $1 million, instead of saying hello, asked me for a skinny cappuccino. Now, while being on the entrepreneurial side and raising money, I hear often from men that my idea is cute. One potential investor actually kissed me on the top of my head when leaving a network event 2 weeks ago. And also, sitting at an all-male table of entrepreneurs, one entrepreneur asked another if I'm his wife's friend. And when all these things happen, I think back to what my father used to say. And he's always said to me, "You're a girl, and this is a man's world. You are going to have to do 150% more than any man and be 150% better than them to achieve the same thing." And unfortunately, I think that's true. And the statistics show that. As we all know, only 2% of VC funds go to female-funded businesses. This actually dropped dramatically in the past year, while at the same time, the global VC investments grew 15% year over year to $259 billion. And US investments reached an all-time high of $130 billion, according to PwC. While, for example, a mixed gendered funding team like my own, I have two male co-founders, funding from us dropped from 13% in 2017 to 9% in 2020, which still leaves an astounding 87% of funding going to all male founded teams. And also the fact that of all available financing, including bank loan, only 14% go to female funded businesses. And then you wonder, why is this? And I think the reason is because VCs invest in people who look like themselves. And so when you're in a pitch room, on one hand, you have female founders that are not getting investment that they need, are getting a minority of those funds available. And on the other hand, you also have, on the other side of that pitch room, probably apart from professional sports, and one of the only other sectors was just the investment business sector, which is hedge funds, private equity, venture capital funds, that have probably the lowest percentage of women at the top of the pyramid, which is around 4%. And women only control between 1% and 3.5% of assets under management. And so often when I tell people this, they think, oh, and this is often men say, well, you know, because it's not really like a lot of women probably apply to be founders. Not many women want to be in VCs or in the investment business world. Well, 20% of businesses that were founded last year were by females. 40%, and even up to, I've seen a statistic of up to 45% of US businesses are women owned. The US has 12.3 million women-owned businesses. US women-owned businesses generate 1.8 trillion a year. And women started 1,821 net new businesses every day last year. So it's definitely not a lack of women wanting to be founders. And the same goes for VC funds. On the entry level, about a quarter to a third are actually females that enter those funds, but only 4% end up at the top of that pyramid. So then often I hear from men, well, okay, well, then in that boardroom, the problem is that, you know, survival of the fittest. They're not performing well. Private tech companies led by women achieve 35% higher ROI. VCs, and I've heard this already statistic today named, and I think it's a great one and worth mentioning again, is that VCs that increase the proportion of female partners higher by 10% saw on average an increase and a 1.5% improvement in annual fund returns and a nearly 10% increase in profitable exits. So it is definitely not an issue that we're underperformed on either side of these pitch rooms. And yes, there is improvement. We've seen some 140 new women-led investment funds launched over the past 4 years. But again, that when that pitch room turns around and the female women leading these funds are pitching for money and are also being, having their results judged, they're experiencing the same bias, and it's from both male and females. They may actually overperform equally as much as a male managed funds, but receive less additional assets, and they may underperform comparably to a male led fund and get more assets taken away. So if it's all on all these sides in a pitch room, and we have few female investors, we have few female founders, what can we do to solve this? And I think there are a lot of great solutions. I completely agree that awareness is number one. And the fact that more and more investors are asking, so how many female funded businesses do you invest in? What proportions? That awareness is key. Making quotas like in Germany on boards. Having more females, this is one idea I heard lately, having more females working on female products related, for example, to menopause, kind of have a focus there will help. Using AIs to analyze decks and deal flow. Actually, one AI recommended 50% of deals that were actually female or minority founded. So that could help with those biases. Also, the theory that since we are seeing more female-led VCs who also focus mostly on very early stage, they're going to provide the inertia that female founders need and minorities to then in the growth stage get investment from male-led funds. And I think all these strategies are great. But in my opinion, fundamentally, I think education from the earliest stages is key. So if we go back to my experiences in college and being catcalled by a professor, where does this come from? And here's where we all have a role. We need to be good role models for future generations and young boys and girls. We need to stop the constant harsh judgment based on people's looks. She must be a bimbo because she's a blonde in a pink dress. The men and women who have helped me along the way in my career, and by the way, I founded 2 businesses. In both businesses, I had 2 co-founders that were male, and I was in the CEO role each time. I feel like they all helped me along the way because they were raised not to judge a book by its cover, to listen, to support others. And also another thing I noticed, for example, in my male co-founders was they tap in not only to their masculine sides, but they also tap into their feminine sides. And what do I mean by this? So often people think of business as competitiveness, winning with these like masculine characteristics of aggression and toughness. And it's also actually has forced women to become, I think, excessively tough and harsh, even including towards other women. We all know the example of being in a boardroom and where women kind of are elbowing each out. They're out for that one board seat that's available to them. And by the way, I actually think that's a tactic created by men so that we don't keep our eye on the ball and we actually get rid of our other women in competition rather than actually working together, getting that seat. And then supporting that woman in that role so that she can get more seats at the table for us, open those doors for us. We shouldn't be playing into being aggressive and harsh and metaphorically wearing that pantsuit. And I actually think that men tap into their feminine side all the time. And it is actually this side and these characteristics that I actually think enabled many men to be extremely successful in business. And listening to their intuition, receptiveness, their observational side, as well as their relationship building. And this is something I've observed in my current business. I found a relationship management app to kind of remember all the people you meet and stay in touch with them. And I often hear actually from women that I've created a tool for women, a very feminine product. And it's funny because actually a large portion of our users are males. And they are outstanding at being thoughtful and putting in effort of remembering kids' names and sports teams and gifts idea and lucky numbers and staying out and reaching out to people. Because business is not built on aggression. It's built on great relationships. My mother always says a deal is not done between companies, it's done between people. And I think there will continue to be inappropriate behaviors. There will be more men that will call my business cute. But I've also learned another important thing from men, not to take these things personally. Men, they can get into a fight and disagree, and the next day be playing golf together and being best buds. And I think we as women should do more of that, including the golfing. And so, truly, what I'd love to say and to wrap this up is that yes, to have more females in the boardroom, in that pitch room, on both sides of the table, we need more awareness. We need more initiatives. They will for sure help. But I also think we need more education, and we all have a role in that. For setting an example for our children, to not judge others by their looks, to quickly catch those biases that may arise, as well as supporting one another in companies and boardrooms and being there. And to a point of what I've heard, if someone's pitching you, give them some extra support, help them, give them a chance. And also to not lose ourselves and what makes us women